The rain began before dawn. Thick, hammering droplets cascading against the high walls of Ridgeview Correctional Facility. Thunder rolled across the sky like something ancient awakening, shaking loose the dust caught between the stones. Guards moved with heavy boots and heavier expressions, their breath fogging as cold crept along the corridors. This was the kind of morning that swallowed hope whole. Faith Brennan felt that cold long before they marched her out of her cell. 2 guards escorted her down the hallway, one on each side. One was taller, bald, with a face so still it could have been carved from granite. The other was a tired woman in her 50s. Donna Hayes, a long-time correctional officer with silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun and soft eyes that had witnessed too much. Donna's uniform was creased, old at the seams, but her presence held a quiet steadiness. 15 minutes, Donna said with a gentle firmness. That's all the warden allows. Faith nodded because she couldn't speak. Her throat felt scraped raw from the night before. She had spent hours trying to steady her hands, hands that once saved lives in the emergency room. Hands that now shook with the weight of a sentence she didn't deserve. At 34, she looked older. Gaunt cheeks, shadows beneath her brown eyes, long dark hair falling messily down her shoulders. 6 years could carve valleys in a person. They pushed open the iron door to the chapel. It was dim inside, lit only by a flickering bulb overhead. The wooden pews were worn smooth, their varnish long faded from the touch of too many desperate hands. At the far end stood a small statue of the Virgin Mary, its paint chipped, yet its expression strangely serene. And there, this sacred, quiet place, was where Faith was meant to spend her last moments before the injection. She staggered forward, knees buckling as she dropped to the cold stone floor. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Please, God, don't let me die as a murderer." Lightning flashed through the small stained glass window. Outside the prison walls, Caleb Madison was walking fast through the rain-soaked street. His olive field jacket was drenched, clinging to his broad frame. The cold bit at his neck, where short dark hair, cut in the disciplined Marine style, dripped with rainwater. His blue-gray eyes scanned the road ahead with a soldier's instinct, every sense alert. Years of service had sharpened his awareness into something almost unnatural. Beside him trotted Arrow, his German shepherd partner. 4 years old, sable fur darkened by the rain, chest marked with a pale broken arrow shape of fur. Arrow moved with a quiet intensity, ears pricked, gaze sharp. He was lean, powerful, built for speed, trained for danger. And unlike most dogs, Arrow carried a near uncanny intuition, the kind that made Marines whisper that some dogs felt fate before humans did. Caleb tugged lightly at Arrow's harness. "Come on, boy. Let's get out of this storm before—" Arrow stopped, frozen mid-step. Muscles rigid, tail straight, ears locked toward the distant prison as if hearing something human ears couldn't. Arrow. Caleb frowned. The dog growled, deep, visceral. Then, in an explosive burst of motion, Arrow ripped free from Caleb's grip and sprinted toward the road. "Arrow, no!" Caleb lunged after him. A truck barreled around the corner, headlights blinding through the rain. Caleb slipped into the street just as the vehicle skidded. Arrow threw himself sideways, slamming into Caleb with all the force of his body. Caleb crashed onto the wet pavement, the truck roaring past his head by inches, horn blaring. For a moment, the world went silent, except for Caleb's ragged breathing. Arrow stood over him, fur bristled, eyes blazing with urgency. "You saved my life," Caleb whispered, stunned. But Arrow wasn't listening. His gaze snapped back toward the prison. He barked once, sharp, commanding, then sprinted toward the gates. Arrow! Caleb scrambled to his feet and chased after him, boots splashing through puddles. Arrow squeezed beneath the half-lowered security barrier. The startled guard, a young man with acne scars and a too-big uniform, shouted, "Hey, whose dog?" Arrow didn't stop. He bolted through the yard, down the corridor, past stunned guards. Alarms blared. Inside the chapel, Faith lifted her head as the door slammed open. A streak of sable fur shot across the room. Arrow. He trotted straight to her and laid down at her knees. Rain dripped from his coat as he pressed his head against her leg, releasing a low whine, soft, protective, almost mournful. Faith blinked through tears. What are you doing here?" The dog stared up at her as if he had always known her. Then something flickered in her memory. A sunlit backyard, a boy, maybe 10, kneeling beside a tiny injured puppy, hands trembling, and her, 8 years old, wrapping the pup's wound with torn pieces of her dress, the boy whispering gratefully, "Thank you, Faithy." A lightning flash, a gasp tore from Faith's throat. The chapel door burst open again. Caleb stood in the frame, soaked, breathless, eyes darting from Arrow to Faith. His jaw locked when he saw her, this fragile woman with familiar eyes. He stepped forward, voice rough. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about my dog. Faith rose slowly to her feet, trembling. "Caleb?" He stared, confusion etched across his features. Rain dripped from his hair, down the stubble shadowing his jaw. His eyes narrowed, studying the contours of her face. Eyes like his, the same shade of brown from their mother. Do I know you?" he asked. Faith's lip quivered. "Caleb, it's me. It's Faith. Your sister." The entire room froze. Donna, standing in the doorway, covered her mouth. A guard outside muttered, "Holy God." Caleb's heartbeat thundered in, his chest. Memories slammed into him like shrapnel. A little girl's laughter, small hands holding his, the sound of their mother calling them inside for dinner. And then, the accident, the aftermath, the trauma that shattered their family. Caleb staggered back a step. That can't be. Faith took one trembling step toward him. "Em Tong." Her voice cracked. "Em Tong and John Quen Em Roy." Arrow pressed his head into Caleb's leg, as if telling him not to run from the truth. Caleb sank to one knee, his breath shaking. "Faith? My God." He reached toward her, fingertips trembling. The storm outside intensified, rain hitting the chapel windows like 1,000 tiny fists. Just as Faith reached out to him, a sound echoed from the hallway. A metallic click. Arrow snapped his head toward the door and growled, low. Warning. Something hungry in the shadows. A silhouette moved past the chapel window, too slow for a guard, too silent for an inmate. Arrow's growl deepened, fur rising along his spine. Faith clutched the back of the pew. Caleb turned toward the window, instincts flaring alive. Someone, or something, was watching them. The storm roared. Donna whispered, "We're not supposed to have anyone out there this morning." Arrow barked once, sharp, urgent, before stepping between Faith and the window. A signal, a threat unseen, a warning of danger coming. The moment passed, but the dread lingered. Something big had just shifted. Caleb stood and wiped the rain from his brow. "Faith, if you're really my sister, I swear I will not let you die today." Faith's tears spilled over, hands shaking as she touched the rosary at her chest. "They say I have 15 minutes left." Caleb clenched his jaw. Not anymore. Arrow nudged his hand, eyes bright, focused as if he already had a plan forming in that sharp mind of his. Faith sobbed quietly. Caleb wrapped his arms around her. She felt small in his embrace. Fragile, breakable, the way she must have looked the night everything went wrong. "Caleb." Her voice trembled. "I didn't kill that man." "I know," Caleb murmured, surprising himself. "Arrow knew the second he saw you." Faith closed her eyes. "What do we do?" Caleb looked at Arrow. Arrow barked once, the bark of a soldier ready for battle. "We fight," Caleb said. And outside, the storm raged on. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. May every miracle find those who need it most. Caleb Madison left the chapel with his pulse still hammering beneath his skin. Rainwater dripped from his olive field jacket, pooling on the concrete floor as he walked. Arrow trotted beside him, each step alert and measured, the sable fur along his spine still raised from whatever he sensed earlier. Caleb forced himself to breathe evenly, but nothing could quiet the storm inside his chest. Faith, his sister, his own blood, alive, wrongly condemned, and he, who had sworn to protect her since the day she was born, had forgotten her completely. He ran a trembling hand through his wet hair. "What the hell happened to me?" he muttered under his breath. Arrow glanced up with soft golden brown eyes, bumping Caleb's leg with his nose, a quiet, steadying gesture the dog used in combat zones whenever a Marine felt cornered. Caleb exhaled shakily and scratched Arrow's muzzle. "Yeah, I know. We'll figure it out." The guard who led them out of the restricted corridor was a lanky man in his late 20s named Officer Ramsey. Narrow face, short sandy hair, and a nervous habit of pushing his glasses higher on his nose. His uniform fit awkwardly, as if it belonged to someone broader than him. Despite that, his eyes held something Caleb recognized: sincerity. Ramsey cleared his throat. "Sir, the warden won't allow visitors during, scheduled procedures." "But you seem to know the inmate?" Caleb hesitated before answering. "She's my family." Ramsey froze mid-step. "Your family?" "Brennan never mentioned—" "She didn't know I'd come," Caleb said firmly. Ramsey shifted awkwardly, lowering his voice. "If there's anything I can help with, I will. Some of us don't think she belongs here." Caleb's gaze sharpened. "Why is that?" Ramsey swallowed. "Because the paperwork from her case was always weird. Incomplete pages, missing signatures. A section of the original file was torn out before it was scanned. But no one higher up ever questioned it." The words hit Caleb like a blow. "Take me to those records." Ramsey nodded quickly and led them through a long hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Arrow stayed close, paws soundless on the polished floor. He scanned every doorway like a trained sentinel. Inside the record room, old metal cabinets lined the walls, their handles cold and worn. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. Ramsey unlocked a drawer and pulled out a thick, faded case folder marked Brennan, Faith, Homicide Division. Caleb took it. The moment his fingers touched the file, Arrow stiffened. The dog stepped in front of Caleb, ears pricked sharply, a low warning rumble vibrating in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Caleb whispered. Arrow nudged the upper corner of the file, hard. The sound echoed through the quiet room. When Caleb lifted the flap fully open, he saw it. A missing chunk of paper, torn away violently. The tear ran through the precise section where the signature of the nurse on duty should have been, who administered the lethal medication to the victim. Ramsey frowned. "That wasn't torn the last time I saw it. I'm sure of it." "Someone doesn't want her name in the file," Caleb said, voice low. "Or they don't want anyone to see who actually signed it." Arrow barked, once sharp and angry. Ramsey jumped back. He really doesn't like that page. That's because it's wrong, Caleb murmured, scanning the remaining fragments. This isn't the truth. He felt something shift inside him, something half buried. Faith's face in the chapel, her trembling voice calling him Caleb. The flash of a little girl beneath a summer oak tree. A sudden ache pulsed behind his eyes. He pressed a hand to his temple as the room swayed. Images flickered. A mother's warm laugh, a boy holding his sister's hand as they ran across a yard. The smell of pine trees on a winter night. A hospital bed, a woman whispering, "Caleb, promise me you'll protect each other." The memory vanished as fast as it came. Arrow nudged his thigh anxiously. "I'm fine," Caleb whispered, though he wasn't sure he believed it. He set the torn file down. "Ramsey, is there a storage room where personal effects from discharged officers or old evidence might be kept?" Ramsey nodded. "Downstairs. Almost no one goes there anymore." "Take me." They descended a dim stairwell. At the bottom was a cluttered room filled with boxes, uniforms, and evidence packets coated with dust. A single lamp flickered in the corner, illuminating motes floating in the air. Caleb searched until he found an old locker labeled Madison, Hale Residence Closure. He froze. "That's my mother's name," he whispered. He opened it. Inside were remnants of a life that no longer existed. A folded scarf still carrying her faint perfume, a broken keychain shaped like a seashell, and a sealed envelope yellowed at the edges. He picked up the envelope with shaking hands. The handwriting was unmistakable. Curved, gentle, familiar. To Caleb, "Open only if I cannot come home." His breath caught. Arrow sat beside him, quiet as stone, sensing the shift in the air. Caleb tore the envelope open. A single letter fell out. "My dear son, if this letter ever finds you, then I was not able to protect you and Faith from what came after our family was broken. I fear the truth may disappear under the weight of powerful hands. So I'm leaving you the only truth that matters. Faith is alive. She has changed her name to protect herself. If anything happens to me, you must find her. No matter who tells you otherwise, no matter what memories you lose, she is still your sister. She needs you, Caleb. She always will." The paper shook in his hands. Memories began to fall into place like pieces of a shattered mirror. His mother's face blurred by tears. A car accident. Hospital lights. The sound of someone saying traumatic head swelling. Memory risks. His mother's voice promising he would remember someday. He sunk onto a crate, gripping the note tightly. Arrow rested his head on Caleb's knee and licked his hand gently. A gesture of comfort, loyalty, and something deeper. Something that reminded Caleb of the trust that had carried them through deserts and firefights. He whispered, voice breaking, "Faith, I forgot you. And Mom knew I would." Arrow looked up, eyes soft. And for a moment, Caleb let himself breathe. Arrow suddenly stood upright, stiff as a statue. His ears snapped forward, his fur bristled. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest, darker than before. Caleb followed his gaze. In the back of the storage room, an evidence locker door, locked moments earlier, was now slightly open. A faint smell drifted out. Not blood, not chemicals. Something floral. Something impossibly out of place in a prison basement. Caleb whispered, "Roses." Arrow growled once more, this time not in fear, but in recognition, as if he sensed the same presence that Faith had felt when she prayed for her life. Caleb shivered. This wasn't over. Something larger than the truth was beginning to stir. He stood slowly, the letter still clutched in his hand. "We're going to save her, boy." Arrow barked softly. Affirmation. Caleb returned to Ramsey with the letter and the torn file. He tucked both carefully into his jacket. "I need copies of every record still intact. And Ramsey, don't mention this to anyone." Ramsey nodded, face pale. "Whatever you need, sir. I'll help." Caleb gave the file one last look. The torn edges, the missing signature, the lies that had stolen 6 years from Faith. Then he whispered, "It's time to get her home." And Arrow, as if understanding every word, walked beside him with a soldier's resolve. If this chapter moved your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. May every miracle guide those seeking the truth. The rain had eased by the time Caleb Madison reached the hospital where everything had begun 6 years earlier. A pale gray morning hung above the building like a shroud, shadows stretching long across the cracked pavement. Ridgeview Community Hospital wasn't abandoned, but it felt tired, its once white walls now stained with weather and years of grief. Automatic doors swooshed open with a mechanical sigh, welcoming Caleb and Arrow into an unnerving silence. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered overhead. A faint smell of disinfectant mixed with a metallic hint, old blood and something forgotten. The reception desk was manned by an older security guard named Henry Lowell, a man pushing 60 with thick gray brows, sagging cheeks, and deep wrinkles that hinted at years of night shifts and too many cigarettes. His uniform fit loosely on his slightly hunched frame. His voice, when he spoke, rasped like gravel. "You're Madison?" he asked, scanning Caleb with curious eyes. Ramsey called ahead. "Said you needed to look at the old ER wing?" Caleb nodded. Arrow stood at his side, tail still, posture firm. "Just need 15 minutes. Henry leaned forward, lowering his voice. "ER is mostly empty now. Only storage and dust. But if you're digging into the Brennan case..." He paused, tapping his fingers against the desk. "People here don't like remembering that one." Caleb offered a tight nod. "That's why I need to see it." Henry slid an access card across the desk with a sigh. "Go on then. But be careful. Some rooms back there feel colder than they should." Caleb took the card and moved down the hallway. Arrow's nails clicked softly against the floor. Every few steps, the dog paused, ears twitching, nose lifting to the air, reading scents only he understood. "Take it step by step, boy," Caleb murmured. "Find whatever doesn't belong." Arrow's ears flattened slightly, acknowledging the command. The ER hallway was dimmer than the rest of the hospital. A few lights had burned out, leaving stretches of shadow that clung to the walls. Discarded equipment carts sat rusting beside abandoned triage stations. Caleb's boots echoed softly. It looked like a place where truth had once screamed and been smothered. Arrow sniffed the air, then lowered his head to the floor. He moved with slow precision, following invisible trails, his muscles tensed, tail dropping low. A sign Caleb had learned to trust. Arrow was catching something. They passed the old waiting room. Chairs were stacked and taped, and a faded children's poster peeled at the corners. Stitched across its surface was a cartoon puppy. Arrow paused to look at it, tilting his head. Caleb almost smiled. "Even you were a kid once," he whispered. Arrow snorted softly, then continued with renewed focus. At the very end of the corridor, Arrow suddenly halted. His stance stiffened, ears sharp, body angled forward. Caleb followed his gaze. The sign above the door read, "Restricted storage, authorized personnel only." Caleb scanned his card. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. The room beyond smelled of dust, antiseptic, and something faintly floral, an echo of perfume long faded. Shelves lined the space, crammed with boxes labeled in messy handwriting. Arrow stepped in first, nose already moving. Caleb scanned the room. There were boxes from hundreds of shifts, hundreds of nurses, records, scrap notes, forgotten supplies. But one box sat slightly out of place, tilted forward and dustless, as though someone had touched it recently. Arrow reached it first. He let out a soft rumble and pawed the box gently. "Good boy," Caleb whispered. The label read, Marlene Scott, Night Shift Supervisor. Caleb froze. Marlene Scott. He remembered the name from Ramsey's hesitant whispers, the nurse whose signature was missing from the torn hospital file. Arrow nudged the box again, then backed up, ears low, tail tucked slightly beneath him. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper. Conflict, warning, recognition of danger. Caleb opened the box. Inside were stacks of documents, tangled scribbles, and a few personal items. A cracked wristwatch, a cloth hair tie, a small bottle of cheap floral perfume with the cap missing. Arrow sniffed the bottle and immediately jerked back, a sharp whine escaping him. His back legs trembled briefly, rare for a dog trained to withstand gunfire. That reaction made Caleb's stomach twist. "What do you smell, boy?" he whispered. Arrow lowered his head, sniffing again, carefully, cautiously. Then he stepped back, tail stiff, muscles shaking with adrenaline. Caleb recognized the cue instantly. Arrow had smelled this before, in Afghanistan, during the traitor hunts. The scent pattern, floral perfume, sweat adrenaline, and a specific sterile chemical often used by medics to mask sedatives. A combination Caleb had only seen on spies who infiltrated bases through medical units. Someone who moved between patients. Someone who handled equipment. Someone trusted. Arrow suddenly barked, not loudly, but sharply, twice, the exact sequence he used in combat to signal danger present but hidden. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the walls, a metallic clang echoed, like a locker slamming shut. Caleb stiffened, scanning the shadows. Arrow's growl deepened, his gaze fixed on the far corner of the room. But the corner was empty, completely empty. Caleb whispered, "You see something I don't, boy?" Arrow lowered to a defensive crouch. The scent of perfume grew stronger, yet no one else was there. A chill ran through Caleb's spine. Someone had been in this room moments before. And Arrow knew it. The truth was moving, and they were now close enough to be noticed. Caleb forced himself to focus. He returned to the box, digging deeper. Beneath the files, his fingers brushed something soft. A latex glove. But not just any glove. When he lifted it, a faint shimmer of powder fell from the fingertips. It still held the shape of a hand, as though removed in haste. Arrow pressed his nose against it and snarled. His hackles rose, his eyes widened, pupils shrinking. He let out a series of short, trembling whimpers. Caleb knelt, placing a steady hand against the dog's neck. "What is it?" he whispered. "Tell me." Arrow placed a paw on the glove, staring up at Caleb. The message was clear. This glove belonged to the person who switched the medication. Caleb turned it over. Embossed near the cuff in black marker was a name, Marlene Scott. He exhaled slowly, anger sharpening his breath. She was the one. She switched the meds. She killed that man and framed Faith. Arrow gave a small, strained whine and leaned against Caleb's leg, as if urging him to be careful. For a moment, Caleb rested his hand on Arrow's back. "We'll find her," he murmured, "and we'll make this right." Arrow barked once, quiet but resolute. Caleb carefully placed the glove into a plastic evidence bag he found on the shelf. He scanned the room once more, feeling the weight of something unseen pressing against the walls. And then he whispered the words that would change everything. "Come on, Arrow. We know who we're looking for now." Arrow stepped forward, tail rising as courage overcame his trembling. They left the storage room, two soldiers walking into the storm of truth. If this chapter touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. May every miracle guide you closer to the truth. The GPS lost signal 10 minutes before Caleb reached the house. After that, it was just trees, rain-slick gravel, and headlights cutting through a forest that looked like it had forgotten the world. Arrow lay alert in the passenger seat, ears pricked, eyes locked ahead. His sable coat caught every flicker of lightning, muscles tense beneath the fur, ready. When the house finally appeared, it looked half swallowed by the woods. Peeling paint, crooked porch, a single weak light flickering in the front window. Caleb parked. He breathed once, steadying himself. "This is it, boy," he murmured. Arrow sniffed the air, uneasy, not fear, warning. They approached the house. Caleb knocked. A long silence, then the faint scrape of footsteps. A chain slid back. The door cracked open. One tired, frightened eye stared at them. Marlene Scott. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Inside. Quickly." Inside, the living room was chaos. Blankets thrown on a couch, dishes piling in the sink, unopened mail stacked everywhere. A single lamp cast a yellow pool of light, leaving corners drowned in shadow. Marlene looked broken. Early 40s, but the anxiety had aged her a decade. Blonde hair, limp and faded, pulled into a messy ponytail. Deep circles bruised her eyes. Her oversized sweatshirt clung to her thin frame. Her hands trembled nonstop. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "They'll know I talked." Caleb stepped closer, calm but firm. "You can still do the right thing." Marlene laughed, a weak, bitter sound. "You don't understand. I didn't switch the meds because I wanted to. They threatened me. They know my brother, he's in rehab. They said they would ruin him." Arrow growled softly, pacing. Not at her, at something else. Something in the walls, something he could sense. Caleb kept his voice low. "You let them frame Faith." Marlene squeezed her eyes shut, tears forming. "I let them. I didn't stop them." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know she would take that shift. She's just a girl." Arrow whined, ears flattened in confusion, half anger, half pity. Caleb nodded slowly. "If you regret it, then help me make it right." Marlene's hands trembled harder. Her voice shrank into a whisper. "They watch me. You don't know what these people can do." And then Arrow froze. He lifted his head sharply, sniffing. A sudden scent drifted through the air, soft, impossible, out of place. Roses. Caleb stiffened. Arrow turned, staring into the empty corner of the room, posture shifting from aggression to alert reverence. Marlene blinked, unaware. "You smell something?" she asked. Caleb didn't answer. Arrow's eyes stayed fixed on that empty corner until a loud clack broke the silence. A wooden box on the coffee table tipped over by itself. Its lid popped open. A silver USB flash drive slid out and hit the floor. Arrow moved instantly. He placed his paw on it and looked straight at Caleb. Marlene gasped. I wasn't going to show you that." Caleb picked it up, heart pounding. "What's on here?" "The original footage," Marlene whispered. "The video before they cut the camera feed. It shows everything." Caleb swallowed hard. "You just gave us a chance. Before Marlene could answer, tires crunched outside. Headlights swept across the room. Marlene's face drained of color. Oh God, they found us. The porch light blinked, then exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. A red laser dot crawled across the far wall, searching. Down, Caleb barked. But Arrow moved first. He slammed into Caleb's chest, knocking him behind the couch. A heartbeat before a bullet shattered the window, spraying glass everywhere. Marlene screamed. Outside, a black SUV idled with its doors open. 3 masked men sprinted toward the house. The front door exploded inward. Arrow launched from the dark like a missile. He clamped his jaws around the arm of the first attacker. The rifle crashed to the ground. The second man charged forward. Caleb intercepted him, slamming him into the wall, twisting, forcing him down. The third raised a pistol at Marlene. No! Caleb roared. He grabbed a lamp and smashed it into the gunman's wrist. A wild shot punched through the armchair. Chaos, glass, gunshots, shadows clashing. Arrow held the first man down until the attacker struck him with the butt of a gun. A bullet ripped across Arrow's flank. The dog yelped. Caleb froze. Arrow. Blood darkened Arrow's fur. He stumbled, then stood back up, shaking, bleeding, but standing. He moved in front of Caleb, planting himself like a shield, baring his teeth, protecting, even now. The masked men stumbled back, realizing the fight had turned. Forget it, one shouted. Grab the car. They fled to the SUV. Tires spun. The vehicle vanished down the dark road. Silence settled, heavy, shaking. Arrow stood trembling, blood dripping in thin lines, but still guarding Caleb. Caleb dropped to his knees and pulled Arrow close. It's okay. You're okay. It's just a graze. You saved us. Arrow leaned into him, exhausted but unbroken. Behind them, Marlene collapsed against the wall, sobbing. They'll come back, she whispered. No, Caleb said, slipping the USB into his pocket. We move first. We take this to the judge. Tonight. Arrow lifted his head, staring at the broken window, as if sensing that same faint scent drifting in. Roses. Caleb swallowed. We're not alone in this, he whispered. Arrow's ears flicked. And in that broken house, beneath the trembling trees, Caleb knew Arrow would bleed before he ever let harm touch family again. Tonight, he almost had. If this moment reminded you that miracles and protection walk beside us even in darkness, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. Faith Brennan sat alone in the isolation cell reserved for the condemned. No windows, just a thin mattress, a steel door, and the smell of bleach clinging to the concrete like old sorrow. Her hands trembled as she held a stub of pencil, barely long enough to grip. The guards had given her one final sheet of paper. She wrote slowly, each letter carved out of everything she had left. If this is really you, Caleb, if you truly came back, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for leaving you alone in that house. Sorry for not finding you sooner. Sorry for forgetting the sound of your voice until last night. Her breath hitched. Tears spotted the page, spreading the ink. I don't know if I deserve to survive. But if you're out there, I just want you to know. I never stopped praying someone would come. I just didn't know it would be you. Faith lowered her head into her hands. Outside her cell, the footsteps of guards echoed, steady, predictable, uncaring. She had 48 hours left. Less if Caleb didn't get the evidence to the judge alive. Miles away, deep in the forest highway, rain pounded the windshield of Caleb's battered SUV. Arrow lay in the back seat, flank bandaged from the graze wound, but eyes burning with awareness, never resting. His sable fur bristled every time the wind shifted. Beside Caleb sat Marlene Scott, shaking as she clutched her jacket to her chest. She looked even more fragile in the morning light. Pale skin, hair unwashed, eyes red from exhaustion and guilt. Every bump in the road made her flinch. "We won't make it," she whispered. "They're not just following us. They're tracking us." Caleb tightened his grip on the wheel. "Then we stay ahead." Marlene pointed to the sky. Small, fast, and almost silent. A drone. Black, military grade. No hospital family should have access to something like that. Arrow growled, low and warning. He pressed his nose against the rear window, staring upward with intense focus. Caleb muttered, "They really don't want the truth getting out." The drone tilted, as if looking directly at them. And then, the forest exploded into motion. A black SUV burst from a hidden logging trail, tires spitting mud. It fishtailed, then aligned behind them. "They found us!" Marlene screamed. Caleb floored the gas. The engine roared. The trees blurred. Arrow barked a sharp tactical warning. But the drone wasn't just watching. It dipped lower, tracking their exact movement. If they stayed on this road, they'd be boxed in by the SUV behind and the drone above. Caleb cursed. "We need another route." Arrow suddenly lunged forward, planting his paws on the center console, staring hard at the left turn approaching, an old fire road, nearly invisible beneath fallen leaves. Caleb knew that look. Arrow had sensed something. Another ambush? Or a way to dodge the one behind them? He trusted the dog, blindly, always. He yanked the wheel left. The SUV skidded violently into the narrow fire road. Branches whipped the sides like claws. The black SUV behind them overshot, tires screaming as it tried to recover. For a moment, they were ahead again. But only a moment. Arrow froze. His ears shot straight up. His pupils shrank to thin black dots. He leaned toward the window, sniffing once, sharply, then barked 3 times. A warning pattern. One Caleb hadn't heard since Kandahar. It meant IED or trap ahead. But this was a forest, not a war zone. No landmines, no explosives. Then the realization hit him. Not a bomb, a blockade. Caleb slammed the brakes just in time. A fallen tree, freshly cut, lay across the narrow road. Had Arrow not sensed it seconds before, they would have crashed at full speed. Caleb's heart thundered. Arrow had saved them again. But they were trapped, and the black SUV was coming fast. Caleb threw the car into reverse. Marlene clutched the dashboard, breathing hard. "They're never going to stop," she cried. "They'll kill us all, just like they said they would." Caleb's voice remained calm, battle soft, marine cold. "Not while I'm breathing." The drone zipped past overhead and circled like a hawk. The black SUV reappeared behind them. Arrow pressed his body low, weight shifting, preparing for something Caleb didn't understand yet. "Marlene!" Caleb shouted. "Show me the USB again." Her hands shook violently as she handed it over. Caleb slammed it into his laptop, the small screen flickering in the dim light. The video was grainy, damaged, parts corrupted. But it showed enough. A hand opening the medication drawer, a vial being swapped, a figure leaning to block the camera, a ring on their index finger, gold, thick, inlaid with a small engraving, a hawk with wings spread. Marlene whispered, "That ring, I saw it that night. It belonged to the patient's son," Caleb finished. "The wealthy heir, the one who ordered Marlene to keep quiet. This wasn't medical malpractice. This was murder. Covered, paid for, and buried. And Faith had been the perfect scapegoat." Caleb stared at the screen, jaw tightening. "This is it. We take this to the judge. Now." The drone dipped again. The black SUV revved loudly behind them. Arrow stood up, wincing from his wound but fighting to stay strong. He placed his paw on Caleb's shoulder, steady, insistent. It wasn't just instinct. It was communication, a reminder, a bond older than memory. Caleb whispered, "How did you know to protect her, boy? Even before I did? How did you know she was my sister?" Arrow looked up, eyes reflecting something deep, older than training, older than reason. He leaned his head against Caleb's chest. And for a split second, just one, Caleb sensed something bigger than both of them. Something that had guided Arrow in that chapel, guided him through bullets, through darkness. Something that knew Faith needed saving long before Caleb remembered she existed. Arrow blinked slowly, as if saying, "You forgot her." But I didn't. Caleb felt his throat tighten. Just then, the black SUV lurched forward to ram them. "Hold on!" Caleb yelled. He floored the gas, and the chase tore back into the trees. They had 48 hours, and the truth was finally in their hands. If they survived the next few minutes. If this story reminds you that miracles guide us through danger, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. The courthouse stood like a stone giant under a gray morning sky. Reporters gathered outside, cameras dripping with rain. Police barricades formed a metal maze around the entrance. The air itself vibrated. Expectation, fear, hope, all tangled into one trembling breath. Inside, the special emergency hearing room was already full. Attorneys shuffled papers, officers stood along the walls, and the hum of whispers rose and fell like a restless tide. And then the door opened. Faith Brennan was escorted inside, wrists shackled, expression vacant. She looked impossibly fragile. Pale as wax, eyes hollowed from exhaustion and from counting down the hours of a life she believed already lost. Her prison uniform hung loosely on her frame. Her hair, once carefully tied, now fell in messy strands around her face. 2 guards walked flanking her, but Faith looked past them, searching. Maybe for a miracle, maybe for a memory. She didn't expect to find both in the same person. Because at the far end of the courtroom, standing tall in his worn Marine posture, was Caleb Madison. He waited for her, not as a witness, not as a stranger, but as someone who had crossed bullets, forests, and forgotten grief to stand here. Faith's breath caught. Her knees weakened. She took a shaky step forward. A whisper escaped her, trembling like a child lost and found. "Caleb?" His stern expression cracked. Just a little. Just enough. One guard tried to guide her to the defendant's table, but Faith pulled away, slow, hesitant, and moved toward Caleb. The bailiff tensed, unsure whether to intervene, but Judge Evelyn Rowe raised a hand lightly. Judge Rowe, tall, silver-haired, eyes sharp with decades of wisdom, watched without blinking. She carried herself with an authority that seemed carved from marble, but beneath it lay something human. Compassionate. Faith stopped inches from Caleb. Her hand lifted, hesitant, trembling. She touched the faint scar near his collarbone, the one he'd earned years ago in a place neither wanted to remember. Her voice broke. "It's really you. I recognize your scar." Caleb swallowed hard. "It's me, Faith." And before anyone could process it, a blur of sable fur sprinted across the polished floor. Arrow. He ran straight to Faith, tail low, ears soft, not in aggression, but in recognition. The wounded German shepherd pressed his large head into her stomach, then curled against her legs like a child seeking comfort. Faith let out a sob, raw, unrestrained, as she dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Arrow's neck. His steady breathing, warm and rhythmic, grounded her after 6 years of drifting in darkness. A courtroom full of strangers watched in stunned silence. Even Judge Rowe's stern mouth softened. Caleb knelt beside his sister, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore. Not today." Faith cried harder. For the first time, her tears weren't from despair. As proceedings began, Caleb took his place at the podium. Across the room, Marlene Scott stood trembling, escorted by 2 officers. She looked smaller than ever, skin almost translucent, hands shaking. Yet she lifted her chin. Today, she would speak the truth. Prosecutor Brandon Kessler leaned back in his chair, expression tightening. His slicked-back black hair and polished suit contrasted sharply with the chaos erupting around him. He smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. 2 things he wore like armor. Judge Rowe's voice cut through the air. "Mr. Madison, you may present your evidence." Caleb nodded and inserted the USB into the courtroom monitor. Static, corrupted fragments, the faint flicker of distorted footage. But then, a clear frame, a hospital room, a drawer, a vial, a hand wearing a thick gold ring engraved with a hawk with spread wings. Gasps filled the room. The camera caught the man's face clearly enough when he accidentally leaned into frame. Marcus Verdon, the wealthy son of the deceased patient, the man who had paid to bury Faith alive. Marlene's voice broke the silence. "I saw him. He switched the vial. I was threatened. I covered for him. I lied." The courtroom erupted. Verdon leapt from his seat. "That's a lie." The bailiff held him back. Marlene sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Faith. I should have spoken sooner." Arrow stood suddenly. His ears shot up, eyes locked on Verdon. His body shifted from soft loyalty to combat readiness. Caleb recognized the stance. It was the same stance Arrow took before attacking insurgents who targeted medics, before protecting the innocent. Faith placed a gentle hand on Arrow's back. "It's okay," she whispered. The dog relaxed, but only barely. As the tension thickened, something impossible drifted through the courtroom, soft, delicate, unmistakable. A scent. Roses. Faith inhaled sharply. Caleb stiffened. Arrow turned his head slowly, like he was following an invisible presence walking past him. For a second, only a second, every light in the courtroom flickered. Judge Rowe paused mid-sentence. Caleb whispered, "She's watching over us." Faith pressed her hand over her heart. Arrow's tail thumped once, like acknowledgement, and the hearing continued. Judge Rowe cleared her throat. "In light of the new video evidence, the sworn confession, and the clear identification of the true culprit." Her voice faltered slightly, emotion tugging at the edges. "The death sentence for Faith Brennan is hereby suspended." Faith covered her mouth. She sobbed, collapsing forward. Caleb caught her. Arrow pressed his muzzle beneath her arm, as if lifting her up. Judge Rowe continued, stronger now. "The case will be reopened. Ms. Brennan is officially cleared of all wrongdoing pending review. Effective immediately, she is removed from death row." Marlene burst into tears. Verdon cursed as officers dragged him away. Reporters surged toward the front of the room. People whispered prayers. But Faith heard none of it. She only heard her brother's voice. "You're safe, Faith. It's over." Arrow leaned against her, warm and steady, as if he had always belonged there. Between what hurt and what healed. If this chapter reminded you that miracles still walk among us, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. 20 days after the courtroom erupted with truth, The gates of Silverbrook Correctional Facility groaned open beneath a sky washed in soft early rain. The world felt muted and slow, as if holding its breath for the moment that had been stolen 6 years ago. A light drizzle tapped against the pavement, gentle enough to sound like a blessing rather than weather. Caleb Madison stood just beyond the gate, tall in his worn marine jacket, posture straight out of habit rather than pride. His storm-gray eyes scanned the entrance with an intensity shaped by war, grief, and the stubborn refusal to let fate win a second time. Beside him sat Arrow, his 4-year-old German Shepherd partner, alert, ears perked, tail swishing against the ground in slow, rhythmic sweeps. Arrow stared at the gate too, as if he already knew, as if he had always known. Caleb exhaled, voice quiet. "She's coming home today, boy." Arrow let out a soft chuff, half bark, half sigh, then rested his head against Caleb's hand. The bandage had been removed days ago. Only a faint line of healing fur marked the place where he had taken a bullet for the people he loved. The gate clanked, locks released. The metal barrier slid aside, and Faith Brennan stepped into the light. She was thinner than Caleb remembered, her frame delicate beneath the plain gray clothes the prison issued. Her brown hair, once neatly tied during her nursing days, now hung in soft, uneven waves around her shoulders. But her eyes, those warm, deep eyes, were alive again. Not whole yet, but alive. She blinked against the light, hesitating for half a second. Then she saw them, her brother, and the dog who saved her life more times than she could count. Faith froze, hand rising to her mouth as every emotion she had buried, every fear she had swallowed, every hope she had dared not believe came rushing back all at once. Arrow moved first. He shot forward in a burst of joy and purpose, paws splashing through the shallow puddles, tail wagging wildly. When he reached her, he didn't jump or bark. Instead, he pressed his head gently into her waist, circling once, before leaning fully against her legs. The exact way he had comforted wounded medics in Afghanistan. The way he had shielded her in the chapel. The way he had stood between her and death itself. Faith let out a sound that was half laughter, half sob. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Arrow's thick neck. "I missed you. Oh God, I missed you so much," she whispered into his fur. Caleb walked toward them slowly, as though afraid the moment would vanish if he moved too fast. His boots splashed lightly against the wet ground, his expression softening with each step. Faith lifted her head. Their eyes met. Rain fell softly around them, catching the faint gold of the afternoon sun. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Caleb, I thought you forgot me. I thought you—" Her voice cracked. "I thought the whole world left me behind." Caleb knelt beside her, his breath shaking just enough to betray the depth of everything inside him. He reached out and cupped the side of her face. Gently, carefully, as if she were something fragile returning from the brink of breaking. "Faith," he whispered. "I didn't remember. But my heart did, and Arrow never forgot." Arrow let out a low, comforting rumble and nudged his head beneath Faith's hand. She pressed her forehead against her brother's shoulder and cried. Quiet tears, the kind that signal not loss, but release. 6 years of pain flowed out of her in shaking breaths. Caleb held her tighter. "It's over," he whispered. "You're free. You're home." For a long moment they stayed like that. Brother, sister, and the dog who held their broken memories together. Faith finally leaned back, wiping her face and smiling through tears. "Thank you for saving me," she whispered to Arrow. The dog responded by gently placing his paw on her knee, an old canine gesture, meant to reassure soldiers who were struggling. Faith laughed softly. "Thank you, little warrior." Arrow wagged his tail proudly, as if accepting the title with honor. They began walking toward the car, the gravel crunching under their steps. The rain slowed to a soft mist. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting a warm, golden glow over the wet pavement. The world felt newly washed, newly possible. Faith took Caleb's arm. He steadied her without thinking. The rhythm between them was natural, inevitable. Something older than memory, born from blood and destiny. As they walked, something small drifted on the breeze. A scent. Soft, sweet, unmistakable. Roses. Caleb paused, turning slightly. Faith did too. Arrow stopped and looked up, ears tilting in that familiar, sacred way. There was no one there. Just the breeze. Just the light. Faith whispered, "She's still with us." Caleb nodded. "I think she always has been." Arrow pressed closer to both of them. A family, broken once, rebuilt by truth, and held together by miracles. They walked toward the horizon, the soft orange of sunset wrapping around them like the closing of an old wound and the beginning of a new chapter. A family restored, found at the edge of despair, saved by love, by courage, and by the loyal heart of a dog who remembered everything, even when the world forgot. If this ending reminds you that miracles return the light when we least expect it, please like, comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. In every moment of darkness, there is a light that does not come from this world. Some call it luck, others call it destiny, but those who have felt it know the truth. It is God's quiet way of reminding us that we are never walking alone. Just like Faith, Caleb and Arrow found their way back to each other through pain, courage, and grace. May you remember that miracles are not only found in stories, they are woven into the small moments of our everyday lives. Sometimes they appear in a helping hand, sometimes in a second chance, and sometimes in the quiet strength we didn't know we still carried. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment, subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge, and let your voice join this circle of faith. May the Lord watch over you and your family, guide your steps, and bless you with light in every season of your life.